Hey, I'm Izzy Flint. I'm a mountain biker and I'm from Launceston. In February 2020, in conjunction with the Tassie Athlete, we launched my story about how I got into mountain biking, but also about a pretty significant crash I had. I was away in New Zealand racing an Enduro World Series race. I was just with a couple of mates and we'd been riding in NZ for most of the week, and coming into one of the last practice stages, I binned it pretty hard, and I don't really remember what happened, but from what little bit recollection that I've got and what people have said is that I fell face first down the embankment and hit a tree. With a concussion, the impacts are far more substantial socially and emotionally than what they are physically. I guess to look at me, no one knew that I had a concussion. I looked relatively normal. Um, Whereas I think the impacts underneath the surface, it's a bit like tip of the iceberg. Like underneath it is far greater problems than what meets the eye. I think the biggest challenge that I found with it was the really initially not being able to put the right words in a sentence or not remembering what I'd said to somebody. And I think the biggest part was I lost who I was, and I talked about it in my article with Tassie Athlete, but I felt like I lost who Izzy was. I didn't know who I was anymore. And I think that was the scariest part, was just having no idea, I guess, where my place in the world was anymore. I'm very lucky to have such a supportive family network around me, and my mum is my best friend. But concussion is one of those injuries where only the person living it fully understands what's going on. My mum knows me inside out and back to front, and she still didn't even quite fully understand what was going on. She did a really good job and managed with what she knew, but she wasn't feeling and living the symptoms that I was. But also with your friends as well, like it gets to the point where no one actually knows that you're injured. Like you can't walk through school or anything like that. Like people don't physically know that you're injured. So it becomes one of those things where I was consuming all of my energy in trying to heal myself and trying to get better, that I didn't have the energy to try and explain it to people because it wasn't obvious. You know, I wasn't walking around on crutches. I didn't have a cast. So it just became one of those things where I didn't have enough energy to try and maintain those relationships. It really knocked me for six. My life pretty much stopped. I wasn't at school for 6 or so weeks. I wasn't working, wasn't writing, wasn't socializing, wasn't really leaving the house for anything because I just didn't have enough energy or enough, I guess, brain power to be able to do anything else. So I think you just become so disconnected so quickly. And I fell behind really quickly. Like I felt like I was disconnected, not only in terms of a friendship base, but also in a physical learning at school. Like I just dropped behind because I just didn't have the capacity to do it. When concussions are so misunderstood, you often walk away with multiple different opinions and you're left kind of wondering who to believe. And I think when I was very first in New Zealand in the hospital, they told me that I could possibly race the next day. And so I walked away with this massive kind of, I guess, glimmer of hope, that then by the time I got home turned into this long recovery process where I had absolutely no hope of racing the following day. But I think when it's not fully portrayed to you what's accurate, you just keep getting these false glimmers of hope. And so I think, so I walked away with pretty much nothing out of New Zealand, from the hospital there. And then once I got home, they have a baseline concussion test that you have to pass before you can do anything. So before you can go back to school, before you can work, before you can do anything. And it took me over 2 weeks just to pass that, which I think from there, that was when the doctors kind of started to realize the severity of it, and how long my recovery might actually be. Yeah, I was super lucky to be able to work with Dom from Tassie Athlete and I guess share my story. It was something that I was very skeptical to do, and there was some pretty raw emotions within that article that I wasn't overly comfortable sharing, but I thought that given the opportunity and the potential to educate and to help other people not feel so alone, it was something I was willing to do, put myself, I guess, out on a limb a little bit to help other people. And I think the response that we got both from the Tassie Athlete, but also personally, made it so worthwhile. Like, as long as I felt like someone had benefited from it, then I felt like I'd done my job. But the response we had to have people just come back to me and be like, I had absolutely no idea, like, you're doing an amazing job. Like, just little comments like that just make it so worthwhile, and make all that uncomfortable conversations that I had with Dom feel like they were worth something, and that I've actually contributed to a greater cause. I think Brain Injury Awareness Week is something that I didn't necessarily know about until now, until after the fact, until I needed it. And I think if we can help educate people preemptively, and to have them better equipped with the skills and the knowledge and the understanding of what a brain injury is and the impacts it has on people, that we can, I guess, be able to better support people that we love, and also have a greater understanding for those people who are suffering with brain injuries. I think Brain Injury Awareness Week has the potential to educate people and to raise awareness for the fact that a knock on the head is not just a knock on the head anymore. I think, like, I've spoke to my papa about it at the time when I had mine, and, you know, he used to play footy and they'd get knocked on the head and they wouldn't even be assessed. They would just continue playing. So I think if we can educate people about how important that is and how much it can affect their life if it's not treated properly, it would actually help, I guess, prevent and also better manage the concussions that people do get. If I had a message to give to younger people about concussion, or to not necessarily younger people, but also people that are just, I guess, uneducated about brain injuries, is that patience is the most valuable tool you can use. Patience with the people around you who are learning how to deal with your situation, but also patience within yourself. It's a very, very slow process. And I think taking the small wins when you get them plays a massive part in your recovery. I think I'm very lucky to be walking away 15 or 16 months later, pretty much with my life relatively back on track. Like, there's still some things that I'm doing to maintain my balance, and little bits and pieces that are also helpful to my sport. But I think for me going forward, I'm lucky enough that I can continue to go and try and chase and achieve my dreams of riding overseas and chasing all kinds of, bombing down all kinds of mountains and all that kind of stuff. But I think I also have this brand new perspective and, I guess, perception of the world. My, I guess, goals in life aren't sport related anymore. It's about taking every day as it comes and understanding that stuff doesn't last forever. Like, we need to live in the moment and understand that it can so easily change. And I think we should always be grateful for the fact of the situations that we're in and the people that are around us. I'm super excited to be a part of Brain Injury Awareness Week, but I'm also super excited to see some of the other stories that come out of this week, purely because everybody's concussion is different, and my story of concussion and the way that my body dealt with it is completely different to somebody else. So I think if we can understand and see different people's perspectives, we can gain a better understanding and better educate ourselves about brain injuries.